Some people might say that Iran should just bomb Israel, for example, or for example, bomb Emirat or Saudi or whatever. I know some people have been saying this. And maybe that's one way. But at the end of the day, Iran needs to look at what will have the most strong impact. And that doesn't have to only be military. Like if you look at Haj Qasim, when Haj Qasim was made Shaheed, when he was martyred by the Americans in January, very soon after, there was a very, I think we can call it a very small reaction by Iran, where it destroyed very, very strategic targets in Ain al Assad, even going through all of the security and the missile defense that America has at Ain al Assad, which is one of its main bases. That attack is better than anything else. Because, first of all, it tells the enemy that, look, we're not someone you can push around. Our weapons are better than what you think because you've put us under sanctions. We've done our own research, we've done our own science, we've made our own equipments, and you know nothing about that equipment. And what we've sent you, this is only a small, small portion of what we have. So behave yourself. Don't play silly games. This is one. The second one is, I think, in terms of diplomatically, it's important for Iran to show backbone. One of the things that saddens me about Iran, especially the current government right now, is the lack of backbone. The constant, if you like, tasbih of JCPOA, JCPOA, JCPOA. JCPOA, okay, fine. Yes, it was Iran needed to remove the sanctions, and that's another discussion which I'll come to in a moment. But JCPOA was a deal done when Iran was under pressure. Iran came to JCPOA from a position of weakness, not a position of strength. Even though some say that it was a position of strength, a position of strength is when you don't have to come. A position of strength is when the enemy comes to you, not you go to them. When you go to them, you're always going to be weak because you need them. Because of that, Iran gave too many concessions in JCPOA. Like, why is it that Israel, which is over there, which has got 400, 500 nuclear weapons, bombs, why does it not have to come into the NPT or into the overview of IAEA? Why is it Iran, which doesn't have nuclear weapons, which everyone knows is not interested in making nuclear weapons, why does Iran have to have all of this very, very strong oversight and everything? No. So I think what the Majlis has done and said that, no, this is going to reduce. This is very important. This is a very important message. And I think they need to go further. They need to tell the world that, look, America in 2018 left this JCPOA. Europe, you have not been doing your duty. When JCPOA was first signed in 2015, in July 2015, I've been following it for a long time, even before it was signed. The moment it was signed, the UN lifted some sanctions, yes. The next day, Obama added those same sanctions, but only from America's perspective. But because America controls the economy of the world in many places, those sanctions were still there. Iran wasn't able to come back into the SWIFT system. It was still very difficult to sell things to Iran, buy things from Iran, and especially Western things. And it didn't really make a great deal of difference. And this is what makes me angry at the reformist factions in Iran that keep talking about that it was a win-win or a good deal or everything. It was not. It was a horrible deal. You know, I don't agree with Trump on many things, but when he says JCPOA was a bad deal, I agree with him. It was a very bad deal for Iran. It was a very bad deal. Because at the end of the day, look, anyone who knows anything about America, when after the second revolution, as Imam Khomeini called it, of the taking of the U.S. embassy after the Awail Inqilab, after the beginning of revolution, there was something called the Algiers Accords, which was signed between Iran and America and a few other countries. One of the key components of that is that America will not interfere in Iran's internal affairs. And as long as that was accepted, the deal was signed, the embassy was released, the people were released, khalas. What happened? The ink wasn't dry on the Algiers Accords, and America started interfering by way of Munafiqin Khalq, by Tudeh, by other groups. And all of these groups began to do terrorist activities. Then Saddam came along and did the occupation of Khorramshahr and Abadan and places and started the 8-year war. This was all at the behest of America. America cannot be trusted. America is like an infant that just wants its own way. It's not mature enough to engage in any discussion. It's a baby. You don't sit down and reason with a baby. You give the baby a toy and say, "Yallah, sit over there and be a good boy." And if the baby gets too noisy, you say, "Hey, you behave." You tell them off, and you take away their toy and say, "Right, you sit there until you're a good boy until you've grown up." So you can't really have a deal with someone like America. And while technically this was a deal between the P5+1, what has 4+1 done to help Iran? When the sanctions by America were added, did Europe sit down and complain that, "Oh, America, you've added these sanctions, this is not in good faith"? No, they didn't do anything. They sat down and said, "Well, it's America's right, they have their right to do whatever they want, whatever." When America left the deal, Europe cried and said, "Oh, America, you should really come back and, please don't be nasty and everything." But ultimately, what did they do? They made up this stupid thing called Instex, which did nothing. Not one transaction has gone through Instex. It's a joke. Whereas if Europe really had the will, and if it wanted to be honorable and honor its agreement, it would say to America, "America, you go to hell. We have signed a deal with Iran. We are not going to betray that deal. We are going to work with Iran. We're going to help." They didn't. So when you get treated like this in an agreement, then that agreement is dead. It's not a valid agreement. It's like me, buying a house from someone and that person saying, "Well, yeah, you've bought my house, but I'm not leaving. My family, me, everyone, you can have the garage, you can have the car park. That's your house." What is this? This is not fair. So the reformist camp and anyone else in Iran, even outside Iran, who keeps saying that JCPOA needs to continue and we will go back to to everything. Yes, it can continue if every point in JCPOA is actually come to and 100% implemented by the other side. And Iran shouldn't worry about implementing its side until the other side have implemented, because now for 5 years Iran has been doing its duty. It's been adhering to it. 15 reports from IAEA have said that Iran is fully in compliance. Yet the rest of the world is not in compliance. So until the rest of the world decide they want to be in compliance, Iran should say, "Sorry, we're not in compliance, your inspectors, yallah ruh, go. When you become in compliance, okay, then we talk, no problem." If Iran does anything else, if Iran acts weak, as unfortunately I've heard from President Rouhani's speech where he said he's against the decision of the Majlis, because he says
by
this
Majlis,
is against
you mean Parliament, right?
By Parliament, yes. This is a mistake by Mr. Rouhani, because actually, first of all, he has to do what Parliament says. He has a duty, and even when the Assembly of Experts and the Guardian Council came and said the same thing, he has no choice. He has to listen, but he also needs to understand that diplomacy has many different ways. Diplomacy from weakness will never achieve your goal. Diplomacy always has to be from strength. And Iran is much stronger, much wiser. I mean, Iran, come on, Iran has got 8,000 years of history. Even before Islam, no one has really managed to fully occupy Iran. They've tried, but they've never fully managed to. Only time Iran has been in trouble is when it's had corrupt leadership. That's the only problem that Iran has had. But even when you had corrupt leadership, like Shah, for example, the people were still getting on with it, and they were opposing the negative ideas of Shah. And many people, of course, we know, before the revolution, many people were killed and put in jail, even Imam Khamenei and many others. Imam Khomeini's son, said Mustafa, he was killed by Saddam and by Shah and people in America. So Iran is a country of revolutionaries, a country of brave people. And so it needs to put that on the diplomatic front as well and say, "Look, America, you want to talk? Okay, fine. But you don't get to dictate to us. We're not going to dictate to you. We're equals. Put your cards on the table and we'll put our cards on the table. And then we decide." But no, our weapons program, this is not for debate. This is because during Difa Muqaddas, during the 8-year war, when we needed weapons, no one was selling us weapons. You were giving all of your weapons to Saddam. Our people were dying. So now we have our own weapons program, our own defense systems, everything. We are not giving that up. No way, not a chance. Nuclear power, we have the right, like any other country, to make nuclear power. So this lie that the Israelis are telling you of nuclear weapons, we can't have nuclear weapons because we are an Islamic society. We are governed by Islam. Imam Khamenei, who is the leader, the supreme leader, he has said it's forbidden to use nuclear weapons and to stockpile nuclear weapons. He said it in black and white. So we're not after nuclear weapons. The Israelis know. The Israelis know that Iran is not after nuclear weapons. They know very well. America knows as well. This is, like I said earlier, this is all designed to make Iran bend the knee, to bow down, and Iran needs to be strong and not allow this to succeed.